welcome back to another episode of Coffee Chaos and Cash Flow, ladies and gentlemen. We are now in season two,
Woohoo!
so yippity yip.
Yeah.
You
Get your
made
skip,
it.
and let's go dive into some extra bits. You know,
Okay, doing some
but yeah,
freestyle, are we? Let's go.
starting us off, I do want to say one quick fun. Let everyone go around and do a little quick fun thing that happened that got you going this week. But in my family, we do like a five things type gifting thing type thing, and it's something to wear, something to read, something you want, and something you need.
Aha.
And that's the five. It's the five
Very
gifts,
nice.
and every that's how we did. That's how we do our gifts. So this year, I got us all. I found this really cool book called "Dad, I Want to Hear Your Story,"
Hmm.
and it's short, but you basically fill it out and it has like questions like dad trivia or let's talk about
Really?
your kids or becoming and
What?
being a dad. And basically it's for your kids so when they're older they can go back through and read this, and they have one for mom, I want to hear your story, grandmother, I want to hear your story, grandfather, I want to hear your story. And I got us all one so that Josiah and
That's
Ann
so cool.
fill it out, and then they have a very it's kind of put together and organized. So I don't know if I'll have the time to fill it out,
Like
honestly.
it.
That's one of the reasons why we're doing these podcasts. So, kids, if you're
It's like
listening,
pre-filling
sorry
it.
if I half filled it out.
Listen
But
to the
anyway,
podcast and fill in the rest of the blanks.
that's my thing.
That's
What
so
about you?
cool. I like that. I like that.
Any fun thing or exciting or like, something you were just flabbergasted that happened to
This
you?
this hasn't happened yet, but tomorrow we are going as a family to our first performance at the Lexington Opera House. My good friend Ed Mackey is the manager of that particular institution, and he's like, "Hey, they're debuting A Christmas Story this week there,
Oh
a play
wow, that will be fun.
of a Christmas story." And he's like, "You should bring the family." I'm like, "We should bring the family." So we are tomorrow bringing the family. So looking forward to that
Oh,
for sure. Yeah, good
Yeah.
deal.
okay, well, let's get back into getting back up, as they like to say. Uh, let's let's talk about resilience and um, what do you do, or what is an important skill or something that you do when you either can see it inevitably failing. Do you like you're literally in the middle of it failing, or it has already just blown up to smithereens. You've gotten a little bit over the emotional hump, but you're not fully over there, but you need to keep going, or you need to get back on the horse. What are some examples that you guys have experienced that in your own lives?
Yeah, resilience to me, if we're just thinking about like a particular or personal definition, I think of resilience as understanding the difference between like when to quit and our tail end episode of the last season. Knowing that quitting doesn't mean everything in your life is shutting down, and that you
Yeah.
just need to throw in the towel and everything, right? So resilience is understanding that after you've shut something down, you've closed or you've moved on from a particular project, maybe even a business, in extreme cases, that you you it doesn't mean you're out of options. It doesn't mean like everything's over. You're gonna have to go get a job. Maybe you do need to get a job. Maybe you do have to do that, but it's not a final thing. You have to understand that it might be a temporary thing. It might be a move in between different aspects of what you're doing, but you have the wherewithal to find your next calling, project, business, whatever it is, in spite of something going poorly.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you on the not quitting part. I would say for me, it is, I mean, um, talking about hitting rock bottom. I've, I mean, it's not rock bottom, but uh, having to go and figure something out and work to do some door dashing or do some Ubering, and you gotta just pick something up where you left off, and you gotta do it quick
Yep.
and get just to get things going, or to maybe counteract, what's ending right now. and I would add to it's not really a skill, but it's an important habit to have, which would be to pray and
Mm-hmm.
I'd always go back and lean on the Lord. He is the best guide. He's the best. He knows what you're going through, and it's a huge anxiety lifter too when you cast your
Yeah.
cares onto Him. I think
Yep.
that's really important. What about you, Yemi?
Um, I mean, definitely prayer is definitely a. It really should be the first response, but I know that in my case, it's often kind of like, oh well, tried everything. I guess well now let's pray. you know,
Sure.
I've done
Sure.
all
Yeah.
I can do, so
Uh-huh.
let's go ahead and let's pray. Let's see. Like Lord, I know you're busy running the universe, but I got some stuff going on. So yeah, I mean that's prayer is probably going to be the. It's going to be to begin the process of moving forward.
Mm.
Getting back up, as we say. But sometimes it's like I don't know. Like sometimes you pray and then it doesn't. Like sometimes I've prayed and just not felt better after. Like
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
the frustration, the crying, the grab a pillow and scream into your pillow. Just those are various ways that I have in the past. Just after hitting that rock bottom, after crashing out. As they say.
Do you guys have a particular example of a time that you have hit rock bottom, like a particular instance, and you thought it was the end, but it was actually a catalyst to help you come back and maybe even stronger than you expected? That resilience was almost part of the process as a whole.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was similar talked about a little bit, but it wasn't my rock. It wasn't the rock. It wasn't the hardest bottom, but there were still things rolling, and because I had hit rock bottom before, where we moved back into my old room in my parents' house. We didn't have like it was didn't have any work or anything. I was extremely angry. I was dealing through a lot of other things, but Sarah Jane through a lot of things within and then this biggest website deal that I have ever had somehow dropped in my lap. I knew that that was my chance for e-commerce, and that's where I took that off. I spiraled, and then through anger and just like I'm gonna make this work no matter what. And I was angry at God, so I didn't turn to Him or go to Him.
Mm.
And that's where the e-commerce store was born out of. So I guess I don't know if it like I thought that like this was gonna be the end of at some points I thought it was gonna be the end of Sarah Jane and I too,
Wow.
of my
Yeah.
life, and everything was just going to like everything was blowing up. It's literally it was all just I didn't know what to do. But hey, I'm here now. The Lord is good.
Rock bottom for me was, I'd have to say, it was when I got divorced, and then like a year later she remarried. Like it went from just bad to worse because it was like I was grappling with the fact that I was no longer like, as the head of the family, like the organization crumbled, and that was me, that was my fault.
Mm.
Like
Mm,
battling that I started this family that I wouldn't finish, that
Mm.
my children would be deprived of the stability of their parents at the same house. Like, I didn't want to have a situation where they were like, oh, I'm going to mom's for Thanksgiving and dad's for Christmas. Like, no, we're just going home for the holidays kind
Mm.
of thing.
Yeah.
And to have that not be the case any longer was a big deal. But then it was like, ex-wife had married this dude who I was just like, why? Like this person
mm,
can't be better than me. Like, and so there, it was all those things going on, and like I was depressed. I thought it was going. I had many days where the success of that day was just talking myself into living longer. There, I refer to the process of divorce, the entire thing, as emotionally violent, and it really is because you make this commitment to stay with this person and be with this person until death do you part, and then that's not happening anymore, and they're still alive, and you've got to pick up the pieces and try to make that work, in this new dynamic, to use the language of the last few years, the new normal. And like at the time, like my emotional coping skills were just like next to nothing. Like I didn't know how to
Mm,
properly cope with things. And there's still times I struggle with communicating and reaching out, when I'm going through something. Um, but again, it was just I remember just being just overcome with this sadness. And this woman walked up to me in Walmart and was like, the Lord told me to give you this. Like, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to Christmas shop for my kids. Like, it's like, do I buy food or Christmas presents at the time? And
mm,
she's like, the Lord told me to give you this. And it was a gift card for just a ridiculous amount of money. And I just couldn't
well,
believe it. And I was like, okay, well, all right, I guess. Thanks, Lord. Like,
mm,
okay, like life
yeah,
is. I can maintain this. Even though this storm is going on, I know that I'm not forgotten. I know that I'm important. I know that I matter.
yeah.
So that was a really long answer, but I hope that for those
It's
of you
good
who stayed
stuff.
with me side quests, I hope that it made sense.
That's awesome. Do you guys have any particular affirmations or mental exercises that you use to stay focused and determined when you're looking to get back up, when you've gone through the valley and you're like, okay, we're back on track, we're making this happen?
I mean, well, once I have direction, once I know where I'm getting back up to, or once the Lord has opened a door, because sometimes you have to stay knocked down for a certain period of time until you get your act together and or you learn whatever the Lord's wanting to teach you. But uh, but yeah, once I have direction and the doors open, I pop on my work playlist, which is a lot of great instrumentals, some
Epic
bangers.
soundtracks.
Oh yeah, some
Yep.
epic. So
Uh
it's
huh.
like it's like
Uh huh.
"Ah, getting off the
Yeah,
ground,
boy.
baby."
So I've got a few. I mean, I go to, Mark 11, I'll just read the words of Jesus. Jesus answered and said to them, have faith in God. For assuredly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. Therefore I say to you, whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them and you will have them. And so there's that, and there's also Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love the Lord, who are the called according to his purpose. And so even in the midst of this terrible situation, the first step I think is knowing that this is working out for my good,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that can initially be hard. But again, if you just lean into, okay, there's good in this, there's good in this, it's good that's coming, it starts to show up. These
Hmm.
things show up, and these serendipitous moments, as they may be called, just happen. They show up. So that's the biggest thing, is realizing that even though this situation is bad, there is something good on the other side of it if you train your mind to look for it. So Aram, who or what inspires you to keep going during the hardest times?
Well, it's funny you mentioned earlier in the episode about how when you come to prayer, a lot of times it's almost that we have a tendency to forget, right? And it's a last resort thing. And it's it's not always been the last resort, but regardless of whether it's your last resort or your first thoughts, and if you're on top of things, God's faithfulness to come in and meet you in your time of need is so well exemplified there. And it's been powerful for me to realize that even in my lack of faithfulness and maybe trying to do things and get back up in my own strength 100% of the time, he's still willing to meet me. But that is definitely a huge thing. And then on a more physical, human to human relationship aspect, my wife, it's funny. I was when I interviewed David Johnston, we kind of were sharing about how there aren't that many people we could, you know, envision ever doing this kind of life with. Like even our good friends, like you guys, we're
Mm.
good friends, but your spouse is very long suffering, and I know Beverly in my case for sure. I just know like there's just nobody else that would have put up with this a long time ago. So the fact that she has hung in there and with through all the craziness, and she's helped me get back up in a lot of cases, and so yeah, very 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 grateful for her involvement and ability to stick around through all this.
Yeah, I would say for me, I agree. My wife definitely has been my best friend and has been there with me throughout it all. But I would also say my parents, my dad has played a huge role in teaching me to lean on the Lord and to trust in Him and to go to Him by example and not just by talking about it. I hope that I can distill that to my kids. As far as like any books or podcasts or like anything that I might turn to or look at or be inspired by, I would say this podcast
Ah,
for
little
one.
plug there.
Oh
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I might have mentioned this before, I don't know, but the book Rejection Proof, it deals specifically with rejection, but it has helped me in points where I've had to get back up because I think so. This guy, Jia Jang, he just went around and knocked on people's doors and asked them like absurd things. He just did this for I was like 30 days or something, and he just knocked on someone's door like, "Hey, do you want to throw a football in your backyard?" Like total strangers, just like random questions he would ask them, and they'd be like, "What?" And his whole thing was, let's see how many times people can say no to a just a weird request and what that does for me. And he was a very fascinating. It's a fascinating. It's super cool, but it's when I'm in the process of getting back up from something that hasn't worked right, I think of examples like that where people have built they've purposely gone out and done something to build a I don't want to say like a shell or a wall because that has a negative connotation, right? But
Mm.
like a certain ability to take something that might put up a lot of people under. Hey, I can't deal with that much rejection, or I can't deal with that much failure, right? I'm gonna clock out, and just helps me to think. Yeah, though there are people that have done worse. The Kentucky Entrepreneurial Hall of Fame. Eric, you and I were there recently, and it was cool to hear the stories of the guys getting inducted into this year's class and how like some of those stories were like of the really bad lows were so bad. I'm thinking
Yeah.
like my worst day isn't anything close to that yet. Like I haven't had a day that bad, and of course my successes haven't been at their level either, right? But it was just it's encouraging. It's like, hey, people have had it a lot worse than I have, and so if you can read those stories, listen to those things, it helps you come back around for sure.
I'd say as far as books or anything like that, like I'll pick up my guitar or listen to some music or something like that. Then I just think about people that have gone through things. My musical taste is very diverse, and so one of the bands I got into was Megadeth, heavy metal.
Mm, very fun.
And the lead singer and lead guitarist is a guy named Dave Mustaine. And Dave was one of the original members of Metallica. He got kicked out because of like substance abuse or something like that. But he went and started Megadeth. At some point over the last like 10, 15 years, he had something happen where he lost the ability to play guitar. And anyone who's heard like a Mustaine solo knows he's one of the like premier quote unquote shredders.
Hmm.
Just technically proficient, just brilliant, real virtuoso. He lost the ability to play guitar and had to learn to do it again. And it's like
Mm.
you think about
Oh
this one
wow.
thing that yeah, it's one thing you've done
Wow.
for years. Like you've been
Yeah.
doing this for years. This is your thing. You are known for being excellent at this thing, and suddenly you can't do it. And now you've got to learn how to do this again. It's and he learned. He developed the skill and everything. Part of that was he professed a faith in Christ. So there were certain songs that he wouldn't perform. He says he won't perform in the catalog anymore because of the message in them. But
Mm.
they're on tour right now. He's gotten his skill back up. But I just think about that, like, wow, I could be Dave Mustaine and not know how to play guitar anymore. Like this was my thing.
Mm.
This is it. This is
Yeah.
what I knew how to do, and suddenly I can't anymore. Like that. That's scary. And so it's like no matter how bad that day gets, like I can walk, I can breathe, I can talk. My wife loves me. Um,
Mm.
I have people around me that care and
Yeah.
like me. But it
Yeah.
can be tough when you're in the middle of that, in the middle of the storm, during that tough time. And so it's a matter of really just interrupting the pattern. When you start feeling bad, there's like a pattern of this happens, and you just kind of feed into it. And it becomes this
Like
this
a
monster
spiral
that
effect.
yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
spiral. This monster grows, and you got to interrupt that. So whether that's going for a walk or doing push-ups or screaming into a pillow or you know
Go into a
listening to
rage room where you
memes,
break stuff.
yeah, laughing at memes that your friend sends you. So yeah,
That's my job for a lot of people is to send them
yes.
dumb memes. That's what my friendship is to several dozen individuals. Oh, that's good stuff. So, wrapping up here, let's all give a quick highlight from this episode. Key takeaway for our listeners to wrap this up. If you wanted to just skip to the end of the episode, here's a quick bullet points on what you can do in getting back up. Eric, you want to go first?
Number one, you need to go to the Lord, give it to him, give him your failure or whatever it was, ask him what to do next, and open the door and wait on him. That's what I would do. Or that's what I do.
Yeah, while you're waiting on the answer or developing a new plan, make sure that you don't see the thing that you've had to close down or move on from as a final event, right? Like be
Yeah.
ready to take on the next challenge. Be
Learn
prepared,
from it.
get excited about it, learn from it. That may be a final period of your life, but that doesn't mean whatever you were doing means, you have to change the entire trajectory of your life and do something completely different because that didn't work. So be ready and excited for the next thing and be expecting it.
I would say what you've got to do is this is interesting because I've seen this work with people who are Christians, with people who are Muslim, people who, even claim to be atheists. You ask God or source or universe, whatever you want to call the higher being, show me ways that you've helped me. Where are ways where you have worked things out in my favor? Because sometimes in the middle of a storm, it's hard to see. It's hard to see there, when this is going on, but then all of a sudden you remember, oh yeah, like no matter how bad things are going, like, okay, well, that's something that doesn't seem like a very big deal in the moment in the grand scheme of life, but it's just one of those thoughtful things that lets you know that you're loved and cared for.
Yeah.
Nice.
You are worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool,
Good
man.
times, gents. It's been fun.
It has been fun.
Woohoo.
Love you guys.
Love you guys. Welcome again, everybody, to season 2, and we'll catch you on the next one.